When we're emotional, we're not at our best. We overreact and we make bad decisions. Think about the ump who made a bad call during a baseball game. You get in his face, you argue, and boom, you're thrown out. Now you'll watch the rest of the contest from the locker room. Feel like someone's stealing your lunch at work? Shoot off a fiery, angry email blaming everybody, and suddenly you're out on the sidewalk looking for a new job. Maybe somebody pulls a prank on you, and instead of just laughing it off, you completely lose it.
In fact, it's pretty freaking unfunny. Ow!
That was an overreaction.
You never get your way when you overreact. You just make things worse. Ask any husband. He knows that. Ranting, whining, getting violent backfires. And it makes you look unstable. And once you start yelling, nobody wants to listen to you. You sound like a brat. The left, they haven't realized this. They're throwing a national temper tantrum to intimidate the Supreme Court. In New York, protesters set up a primal scream station to voice their frustrations like they did when Hillary lost in 2016. Listen. In D.C., a fired-up mob surrounded the home of many conservative justices at night after a leftist group leaked the addresses.
Keep abortion safe and legal. You don't care if people die. You don't care if people die. Abortion safe and legal. We will not go back. I see you, buddy. We will not go back. We will not go back. We will not go back.
This was enough to force Justice Alito and his entire family into hiding. They've moved now to an undisclosed location. An angry left-wing mob has forced a Supreme Court justice into hiding. Let that sink in. If men wearing MAGA hats forced Justice Sotomayor into hiding, how do you think that would go down? And this was just a warning shot. We know where you live, do what we say, or else. We know what the pro-abortion protesters are capable of. In Wisconsin, some lunatic firebombed a pro-life group's headquarters. They actually threw a Molotov cocktail through the window. And if that message wasn't clear enough, they used spray paint to spell it out. If abortions aren't safe, then you aren't either. Planned Parenthood calls abortion sacred. Now, when something is sacred, it takes on a religious connotation. This is a religious war for the left, so anything goes. The ends justify the means. Now, the White House knows this and knows how fervent their base needs to be for the midterms. The White House did nothing to stop this. Last week, they refused to condemn protesting at homes, and they gave this weekend's protest license. Now, after the backlash, they've released a weak statement saying President Biden strongly condemns this attack and political violence of any stripe. Now, to give that a little context, it took less than 24 hours for Joe Biden to condemn Jussie Smollett's fake lynching. He said, "We must stand up and demand that we no longer give this hate safe harbor. We are with you, Jussie." By the way, he never took that down. But at least they're not condoning this action, which is more than we can say about Nancy Pelosi. After protesters spent the weekend intimidating Supreme Court justices, the Speaker released a statement this morning saying this: "We have been moved by how so many have channeled their righteous anger into meaningful action, planning to march and mobilize to make their voices heard." Letting threats of violence slide is nothing new for Nancy. During the summer of 2020, when rioters were hell-bent on tearing down our history and desecrating statues of our founders, Pelosi was covering for them.
Shouldn't that be done by a commission or the city council, not a mob in the middle of the night throwing it into the harbor?
People will do what they do.
People will do what they do. And this came after she dressed up in African tribal gear with congressional Democrats. Remember, she kneeled on the Capitol while $2 billion in damage was done by Black Lives Matter protesters. All this happened while the Biden-Harris administration or campaign was bailing out murderers, rioters, and looters who rampaged our cities. Is encouraging violence against political opponents the official stance of the Democratic Party? In 2018, Congresswoman Maxine Waters, no relation, told her followers to harass Trump officials in public.
Let's make sure we show up wherever we have to show up. And if you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd. And you push back on them. And you tell them they're not welcome anymore, anywhere.
And the media loves it. They always have. Rabid protesters surrounding the homes of the justices was music to the media mob's ears.
I think for a lot of people, a conversation about civility feels like it misses the mark when constitutional rights that you believe that you had for over 50 years are about to be overturned. The justices have security.
What if a mob showed up to a CNN anchor's home at night with their children there, chanting death threats because that anchor did something at their job that affected their lives? Would that be okay? I don't think they'd be okay with that. This is the same network who called the BLM riots fiery but mostly peaceful. And remember, all this was set off by a politically motivated leaker. This is a serious breach of the high court, but the left has no interest in finding out who this person is, unless, of course, it's to have sex with them.
I would like to find out who the leaker is so I could make sweet love to that person, because that person is a hero to me. Okay? And if the leaker, a lot of people are saying it could be a conservative, if the leaker is a Republican, and if I get pregnant during our lovemaking, I will joyfully abort our fetus and let them know.
Oh, my God. And isn't it interesting that most of these major events these days are started by these liberal leaks? Trump's phone call with Zelensky, the Steele dossier, that was one big leak. Trump's tax returns. You can't trust these people at all. And liberals constantly yammered on about protecting institutions for 4 years under Trump. And as soon as they get a decision against them, all hell breaks loose. They storm to the judges' homes and destroy private property. This is going to blow up in their faces. Siding with rage over reason always does. Do they even realize if this gets overturned, it goes back to the states to decide? Do they even know that? This is part of the democratic process. You might not like the outcome, but you have to live with the decision. Isn't that what they said about certifying the election? But they're getting ready to run with this all summer. It's the only thing they have to campaign on. Border crossings, crime, inflation, all record highs. And gas prices are about to break the record Biden broke last month. People don't feel better off than they did a year ago, and abortion isn't going to save Democrats from a shellacking in the midterms. Just listen to what people are really concerned with.
I went straight to Costco, and they didn't have my formula. I went to Target, didn't have my formula. I went to Walmart, and they didn't have my formula. And I went to Fred Meyer, and they didn't have my formula.
It has been a nightmare. Every few days hunting for baby formula. Every grocery store around me, the shelves are completely empty.
I don't even look at how many gallons anymore or what their dollar amount is anymore because it's expensive everywhere.
Normally, I used to put $2,000 in diesel, and now I got to put $5,000.
They're not thinking about Roe v. Wade when they're trying to figure out how to pay for groceries and put gas in the tank. And it's not just educated suburban moms. The New York Post points out, losing federal abortion rights is unlikely to lure many young voters to the polls in states where their rights have already been restricted. And among Hispanic voters, Democrats' abortion efforts are backfiring. Quote, Hispanic voters are the least pro-choice of any major U.S. demographic, with 56% calling themselves pro-life and 40% pro-choice. The potential reversal of Roe v. Wade could energize Hispanics to vote more heavily for Republican candidates. And when it comes to black voters, the article notes this, quote, black women comprised 13% of the U.S. population, but accounted for nearly 40% of all abortions nationwide. There simply aren't enough black female voters to dramatically shift any election outcomes. So to sum it up, Democrats' pro-abortion push isn't going to move the needle the way they think it is. Most voters understand that conservatives run the court now, and Roe v. Wade was a flawed decision. It always has been. Even Ruth Bader Ginsburg admitted it. The Supreme Court isn't banning abortion. They're just leaving the decision up to the states. That's all this is. Nobody's banning gay marriage or interstate travel. Liberals can cry, threaten, and firebomb all they want. It's not going to help their country or their cause. It's like those climate protesters who block the roads and start causing traffic. Once you make me late to work, you lost me. If they want to get their way, they should get together and vote, not riot. We cannot bow to emotion. We need to cool down as a country and move forward together.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.